Where did ancient humans hide from lions? You wake up to a sound you can't place. Not a car outside your window. Not a dog barking in the distance. A deep, vibrating growl. It comes from somewhere beyond the darkness, no more than a few dozen meters away. You can't see it, but it already knows where you are. For almost our entire history as a species, this wasn't imagination. It was night. And somewhere nearby, there was probably a lion. Today, fewer than 25,000 wild lions remain across Africa. But between 2 million and 300,000 years ago, giant cats weren't confined to a handful of national parks. They lived across Africa, Europe, and much of Asia, sharing the same landscapes as your ancestors. For prehistoric humans, lions weren't symbols of courage. They were competitors. Sometimes they were hunters. And the strange part is this. Your ancestors didn't survive because they were stronger than lions. They survived because they learned where lions didn't want to go. Once you see the archaeological evidence, you'll never look at a cave, a campfire, or even your own front door the same way again. About 1.8 million years ago, early humans, like Homo erectus, began spreading across eastern Africa. The landscape wasn't an endless forest. It was a patchwork of open grassland, scattered trees, rocky hills, and dry river valleys. Perfect country for predators. Among them were lions far larger than many alive today. One species, Panthera leofossilis, eventually reached parts of Europe and could weigh well over 300 kilograms. Even modern African lions commonly exceed 190 kilograms for males. But lions weren't alone. There were also leopards, spotted hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and giant packs of wild dogs. Your ancestors occupied the middle of this food web, not the top. Evidence from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania paints a grim picture. Beginning in the 1930s, archaeologists Louis Leakey and later Mary Leakey uncovered stone tools alongside butchered animal bones dating back nearly 2 million years. Many of those same bones carried two different kinds of marks: sharp cuts from stone tools and deep tooth marks from large carnivores. Sometimes humans reached the carcass first. Sometimes lions did. Sometimes they fought over what remained. Life wasn't divided neatly into hunter and hunted. It shifted every day. But here's where it gets stranger. Sometimes the bones belong to humans. One of the most unsettling discoveries comes from Swartkrans Cave in South Africa. Excavations led by the South African paleontologist C.K. Brain during the 20th century revealed hundreds of fossilized bones belonging to early human relatives. Many weren't simply buried there. They had been eaten. Some skull fragments displayed puncture holes matching the spacing of leopard canine teeth. Long bones showed crushing damage nearly identical to what modern big cats leave behind. Brain compared these fossils with feeding patterns from living predators across southern Africa. The conclusion was difficult to ignore. Early humans weren't always the hunters entering caves. Sometimes they were the prey being dragged inside. This overturned one of archaeology's oldest assumptions. For decades, caves had been imagined as safe prehistoric homes. Instead, many caves first belonged to carnivores. Humans often arrived later, or waited until predators left. A cave wasn't automatically shelter. It was occupied real estate, and every entrance came with a question: who was already inside? That single question may have determined whether an entire family survived the night. Except there was another problem. Even if you found an empty cave, it might not stay empty for long. An empty cave solved only one problem. It gave you a roof. It did not give you ownership. Every sunset, predators began moving again. Modern studies in the Serengeti National Park show that lions are overwhelmingly nocturnal. Researchers such as Craig Packer at the University of Minnesota found that lions often hunt between dusk and dawn, using darkness to approach within 20 to 30 meters before charging. Your ancestors couldn't outrun them. A lion can sprint at nearly 80 kilometers per hour. No human has ever come close. So, survival depended on changing the rules of the encounter. The most powerful weapon wasn't a spear. It was information. You needed to know where predators traveled, where they rested, and, just as importantly, what they avoided. One clue comes from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa. In 2012, archaeologist Francesco Berna and his colleagues analyzed microscopic ash and burned bone buried deep inside the cave. The evidence dated to around 1 million years ago. It is among the oldest convincing evidence that humans repeatedly controlled fire inside a cave. That detail changes everything. Fire did more than cook food. It changed the landscape of fear. Modern field observations show that many large predators hesitate around sustained flames. Lions are curious, but they generally avoid active fires, especially when flames are bright and unpredictable. A small campfire was not an impenetrable shield, but it created something your ancestors desperately needed: distance. A lion that stayed 50 meters away instead of 5 could be the difference between life and death. But here's where it gets stranger. Fire also changed the cave itself. Without fire, the deepest chambers were almost useless. After sunset, they became absolute darkness. With fire, humans could move farther inside, dry, damp ground, keep insects away, and extend the hours they could safely remain awake. Archaeologists have discovered repeated hearths in caves across Africa, Europe, and the Levant, suggesting these places were not temporary refuges, but carefully maintained living spaces. They were redesigned, one fire at a time. But even fire wasn't enough, because caves had another enemy, one that didn't roar. Around 400,000 years ago, prehistoric humans increasingly occupied caves across Eurasia. Sites such as Kasem Cave reveal organized hearths, repeated occupations, and carefully butchered animal bones. But caves also trapped moisture. They attracted insects. They concentrated parasites. Ticks, fleas, lice, and disease could spread rapidly in enclosed spaces. Researchers studying prehistoric cave sediments have found traces of repeated cleaning, ash deposits, and shifting activity areas, suggesting people intentionally managed their living environments instead of simply sleeping wherever there was space. This was not random behavior. It was planning. Some areas became places for cooking, others for sleeping, others for tool-making. You weren't just hiding from lions anymore. You were building a place that predators found increasingly difficult to reclaim. That pattern appears again thousands of kilometers away. At Blombos Cave, occupied around 100,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered evidence of carefully organized living areas, engraved ochre, shell beads, and sophisticated stone tools. These discoveries suggest something remarkable. The safest shelter wasn't always the deepest cave. It was the cave that people continuously improved. Each generation inherited knowledge about airflow, entrances, visibility, nearby water, escape routes, and seasonal animal movements. A cave became more than geology. It became memory. But there was one place that may have been even safer than caves. And, surprisingly, it wasn't surrounded by stone at all. The safest place wasn't always a cave. Sometimes it was the open ground. That sounds backwards. A cave feels permanent, protected, hidden. But permanent shelters also create predictable routines. Predators learn those routines. In modern Africa, lions are known to revisit successful hunting locations. If prey regularly gathers near the same waterhole or follows the same trail, lions often return. Your ancestors understood this long before anyone wrote it down, so they stayed mobile. Archaeological sites across the Middle Stone Age show repeated cycles of occupation and abandonment. Camps appeared for days or weeks, then disappeared. Families moved with the seasons, following herds, ripening plants, and changing water sources. One of the clearest examples comes from Ohalo II, a hunter-gatherer campsite dated to about 23,000 years ago. Excavations uncovered brush huts, hearths, grinding stones, fish remains, seeds, and thousands of plant fragments. It wasn't a cave. It was an open-air settlement. The huts were lightweight, built from branches and grasses, and positioned near reliable fresh water. They could be repaired quickly or abandoned just as easily. That flexibility was a survival strategy. If predators became too common, if food disappeared, if a nearby water source dried up, the camp moved. The home was never the structure. The home was the group. But mobility alone couldn't explain humanity's survival. There was one advantage that no lion ever possessed. Each generation could inherit knowledge from the one before it. Anthropologists often describe humans as a cumulative culture species. Unlike most animals, we don't simply learn from experience. We inherit discoveries. A child didn't need to learn by being attacked. They could be told, "Stay away from that ravine after sunset. Don't sleep beneath that cliff. Watch for vultures circling overhead. Never enter a cave that smells strongly of fresh meat." Those weren't instincts. They were lessons. Researchers such as Joseph Henrich have argued that this accumulation of shared knowledge became one of humanity's greatest evolutionary advantages. A single discovery could survive for generations. Over thousands of years, those lessons became invisible. Children grew into adults already knowing where danger usually waited. Lions evolved sharper teeth. Humans evolved better information and information scales. One person sees tracks. Another remembers where they lead. A third builds a fire. A fourth watches through the night. No individual became stronger than a lion. The group became harder to hunt. That difference changed the future of our species. Today, very few people will ever hear a lion outside their home. Most of us lock a door before bed without thinking about it. We switch on a light, close a window, check a security camera. These actions feel ordinary, but they all follow the same ancient pattern. Create a barrier. Reduce uncertainty. Make the night a little safer. Your home is no longer a cave. Your fire is no longer a circle of burning wood. But the instinct behind both is remarkably old. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, your ancestors survived because they learned that safety was never a place. It was something they created together. And perhaps that's the most surprising discovery of all. The reason humans still build walls, gather with family at night, leave lights on, and search for shelter isn't simply because we enjoy comfort. It's because, for countless generations, somewhere beyond the edge of the firelight. Something was always watching.